In April 2014, Panamanian police received a report of the disappearance of Dutch girls who had gone for a walk along a popular tourist route. Despite an active search, the remains of their bodies were only found a few months later, and the evidence uncovered provoked many theories about the mysterious deaths of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. Many inconsistencies and conflicting testimonies have made the disappearance of the Dutch tourists one of the most high-profile and controversial cases. The 2014 incident is still being investigated by researchers, locals, journalists, and the girls' relatives. Why has the investigation taken so long? What are the different versions of what happened? And what really happened to Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon on that ill-fated trip? The story of Lisanne Froon and Kris Kremers' joint trip began very well. The girls met in one of the restaurants in the Dutch town of Amersfoort, where they both worked, and over time became close, discovering many common interests. In the autumn of 2013, the friends decided to plan a holiday together and started saving money. They initially wanted to go to Costa Rica, but later decided on Panama. The girls' plans included not only excursions and beach holidays, but also learning Spanish and volunteering. On 15 March 2014, Lisanne Froon and Kris Kremers arrived in Panama for 6 weeks of sightseeing, working with children and learning about the culture and language. The friends spent the first 14 days in the town of Bocas del Toro, where they concentrated exclusively on beach holidays, and then moved to Boquete, where they rented a room from local resident Miriam Guerra, enrolled in Spanish classes at the Spanish by the River School, and were due to start volunteering at the Guarderia Ora kindergarten on 31st March. But due to a mistake by the organizers, the start of work was postponed for a week. Disappointed by this turn of events, the girls began to think about what they could do with their free time. After a short discussion, the friends decided to go hiking on the El Pianista Trail through the Baru National Park. On 1st April, Lisanne and Kris left their rented accommodation and took a taxi to the start of the trail without telling anyone that they knew where they were going. The girls wrote that they were going for a walk around town, but they did not tell their landlady that they were leaving. The friends then had breakfast at the El Pianista restaurant at the start of the trail. According to some reports, 2 young Dutch men accompanied Lisanne and Kris, but this version is not confirmed by the restaurant staff or the police, and then set off on the trail without a guide. The exact time Lisanne and Kris set off is unknown. According to the metadata of the images found later on their smartphones and cameras, the tourists left at around 11 a.m., but the taxi driver who brought the girls to the location, as well as the staff of El Pianista, claimed that they could not have started their journey at that time, as they were in the restaurant. The route chosen by Lisanne and Kris took them through steppe and jungle, ending at the Mirador, a viewing platform overlooking the city and the sea. Judging by the photos taken by the hikers, they successfully completed the trail and reached the Mirador, but then did not return but continued along the road, which is no longer part of the El Pianista route. After the girls disappeared, the public wondered why the unprepared hikers had gone into the wild jungle, ignoring the warning sign. As it turned out, the sign indicating the end of the route was only installed on the Mirador in 2016, 2 years after the incident. In the same year, Ilka Aguirre, director of the Panamanian Ministry of the Environment, said that the El Pianista route had never been an official route and that it was therefore a great risk to visit it. Apparently everything went according to plan at the beginning of the trip, but the latest photos, dated 1st April, show Kris Kremers crossing a small rocky stretch of water outside the route. Her clothes and body show traces of mud, and her expression is not as happy as in the previous shots. From that moment on, the girls never heard from each other again, and what happened to them is still one of the most gruesome mysteries of our time. Kris and Lisanne's parents were among the first to raise the alarm. According to them, they were in contact with their daughters several times a day, and when their phones were switched off, they were alarmed. In addition, the fact of the tourists' disappearance was reported by local guide Feliciano Gonzalez. He said he was supposed to meet them at the language school on 2nd April, and when they did not show up, he and the employee of the educational institution decided to go to their home. And when he did not find the girls there, he contacted the police and then the National System of Civil Protection of Panama, SANAPROC. According to the journalist Jeremy Crete, Gonzalez agreed to meet Kris and Lisanne on 31st March, and according to the guide himself, on 1st April the staff of the language school informed him that the Dutch tourists were looking for a look guide and would like to meet him on 2nd April. However, the meeting did not take place on the agreed date, and thanks to Feliciano Gonzalez's appeal, a massive search was launched. It is worth noting that during the first few days, only local guides were involved in the search, and it was not until 5th April that Sinoproc forces joined in. An active search of the area was carried out until 14th April. The authorities cordoned off the suspected site of the girls' disappearance from tourists. Several teams of rescuers, helicopters, and specially trained dogs were deployed, but no trace of Kris and Lisanne was found. News of the Dutch tourists' disappearance spread like wildfire. Not only in Panama but around the world. The country's president, Ricardo Martinelli, was forced to call an emergency press conference to report on the progress of the investigation. The families of the missing, as well as a number of media outlets, offered cash rewards for information, and an anxious public organized volunteer groups to help search for the girls. Sadly, all efforts were in vain. The first breakthrough in this mysterious case came just 2 months later, on 11th June 2014, when a local resident, who had gone to the Culebra River to wash her clothes, found a backpack that later turned out to belong to Lisanne. Froon. It contained money, mobile phones belonging to the missing girls, several items of clothing, and a camera, thanks to which it was possible to reconstruct the chronology of events. The rescuers, who had received information about the location of the rucksack and the images from the camera, started searching again and soon found several fragments of the girls' bodies. According to forensic experts, all the remains belonged to the missing girls, but it was not possible to determine the cause of death due to the insufficient amount of material examined. The discovery of the remains did not clarify the circumstances of the girls' disappearance and death. The public began to put forward a variety of theories, ranging from wild animal attacks to criminal theories including robbery, murder, sexual assault, and even ritual murder by Aboriginal tribes. But the investigation insisted that Kris and Lisanne had died in an accident. After examining the tourists' mobile phones, the police found that the girls had tried several times to call the emergency services, but were unable to because there was no mobile phone service behind the lookout. The photos taken with the tourists' camera were then examined in detail, but the frames found only confused the investigation. The memory card contained 133 photos taken between 1 and 8th April. The last attempt to contact the rescue service was recorded on 3rd April. The first 33 photos, identified by forensic experts as frames 476 to 508, were taken on the day of the start of the route, the last ones showing Kremers crossing the water. Then frame 509 was taken, but later deleted without the possibility of recovery. This fact aroused particular interest because no other photo was deleted, even blurred shots. And besides, deleting a frame from the camera without connecting it to a computer implies the possibility of its recovery, which led the police and volunteers to the version that there was someone else who deleted the photo together with the girls. However, this theory was later rejected by the authorities due to a lack of other evidence. The most mysterious find on the memory card was a series of 100 pictures taken on the night of 8th April. Frames 510 to 609. They do not show people, just some outlines of the area. The purpose for which the girls took these pictures is still a mystery. Some believe that the lost walkers were trying to remember the path they were on. Others that Kris and Lisanne were hoping to attract rescuers by using flash photography. Still others are sure that one of the girls was fatally injured and the other was trying to capture the place where the body was left. In September 2014, the Panamanian police officially informed the girls' parents that they had died as a result of an accident. According to the investigation, Kris and Lisanne had lost their way and allegedly fallen off a cliff into a river. The conclusion of the law enforcement authorities was categorically not acceptable to the parents of the victims, and a year later the final search for remains and evidence was organized with the participation of criminalists and forensic experts. After a thorough search, all members of the group declared that any version that differs from the official one, including murder for the purpose of robbery or rape, is unlikely. Nevertheless, the version that the girls might have got lost on one of the trails and accidentally fallen into the river seems untenable to many, and with good reason. Kris and Lisanne's parents, who walked their daughter's entire route, as well as the Dutch investigation team that visited the area, claimed that even the most inexperienced hiker could hardly get lost. The fact is that there is only one trail along the entire route. Even after the mirador, there are no branches, turns, or forks, and therefore it is almost impossible to get lost in these places, according to the representatives of the agencies. There have been only a few cases of missing people in these places, but all the lost tourists were found in less than a day. In addition, most researchers are concerned about the fact that the rescuers found only a few body fragments. According to criminalists and forensic experts, victims of falls from heights usually remain intact and do not disintegrate into pieces, which directly indicates the violent circumstances of the girls' deaths. This theory is supported by the testimony of Jose Morales, the owner of a small hotel near the start of the route. According to him, on the evening of 1st April, he saw two tired girls who asked how they could get to the city, to which he advised them to call a taxi, which means that the victims still returned to the start of the route and were not lost in the jungle. However, this testimony was not taken into account because the witness was not sure of the date and whether he had actually seen Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. He had only spoken to the strangers for a few minutes. There is a widespread belief on the internet that the Panamanian authorities deliberately ignored certain facts and evidence in order to present the case as an accident. According to some observers, they hope to maintain the flow of tourists to the country, which generates significant revenue. But no evidence has been found to support any of the alternative versions. Today, despite the efforts of journalists, volunteers, experts and representatives of non-profit organizations, the case of the disappearance of Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon remains one of the most burning mysteries of our time. But the public does not give up hope of finding answers to the main questions: what was depicted in the missing photo? No. 509. Why did the girls take a series of night shots, and what really caused their deaths?